I'm Dr. Allan Perel, and this is Conversations in Medicine. Good evening. I'm Dr. Allan Perel, and this is Conversations in Medicine. This program brings cutting-edge medical topics to the Staten Island and tri-state community. We're about to celebrate for the Jewish population, for everyone else who is out there, Jewish New Year. It happens during September and October. It's the year 5779. So tonight, as part of our spiritual health, we're not going to talk about some medical topic tonight, but we're going to talk about Jewish New Year, something called Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And I've got some experts, people who are participating in this, and wonderful guests tonight to talk about it, to take some of the mystery out of it, to see what does 5779 mean. You're going to hear about it on television. And for those of the Hebrew faith, we're going to do something very, very special during the show. And for everyone else, we're going to hear some wonderful, wonderful sounds that really make the holiday in good spirits. So my wonderful, esteemed guest is Rabbi Yochanan Ivry, who's the spiritual leader of Torah Emes, the synagogue on Staten Island. His wonderful son, Shmuel Ivry. Thank you and welcome for coming. And Esther Rodriguez, a close dear friend and congregant who is so knowledgeable and added so much charm to everyone's life that she's touched. And so it's a pleasure to have you all on the show. Yeah. So we're going to get started. So you talk about the Jewish holidays, we say Jewish New Year, and we commemorate it. How is Jewish New Year different than other New Years? We see English New Year's, Chinese New Year's. Tell us a little bit, again, as a Staten Islander and a New Yorker, about the difference and what's being celebrated.
So I'd like to start with a little story. My wife says, I say sometimes too many stories, but this is a very interesting story. I traveled once to England, and I was staying over at a home of a gentleman who had a son, unfortunately, who was handicapped, who was paralyzed actually, and the father, who was, I would say, in his late 50s or maybe even early 60s, would carry his son up the stairs and down the stairs, from the bedroom to the kitchen and back. And it was just, I saw him working so hard, and I asked him one late evening, I said, what is it? How do you do this? How do you, day in and day out, take care of your son? And you're not that very young. And he answered something that really stayed with me to this very day. He said, you see, if we think that life is, that we are here to be served, to be given everything on a silver platter, then we have a lot of complaints in life. But if we realize that we're here to serve others, to help others, and to serve and to be here for a higher purpose, then it's a whole different perspective. Oh, and that message stayed with me. And I think this really encapsulates Rosh Hashanah, beginning of the High Holy Days, in that Rosh Hashanah is actually the day when Adam and Eve were created. It was the last day of creation, the sixth day of creation, when all of the universe was already created. And Adam and Eve now are the final touch, the final creation, the last that were created. You can imagine a whole universe that's in front of you, and the entire universe just for yourselves, just the only humans that existed at the time. And what did they do? They gathered all the animals, they gathered all of creation, all the plants, and they all said, let us proclaim God as our creator, as the Almighty. And that is what Rosh Hashanah is about. We have here a shofar, and one of the traditions is that we sound the shofar.
The shofar is a ram's horn.
Right, it's a ram's horn, and an actual real shofar. It's obviously polished here, but the idea of the shofar has several reasons, one of which is that we want to proclaim, just as in ancient times they would sound the trumpet or a horn to announce the king's presence. We also want to, on this day, acknowledge that we have, the Almighty, the Almighty King who rules over the universe. Now, the other message of the shofar, and I will sound the shofar soon, and maybe even Shmuel, right? Shmuel's going to sound the shofar. The sound of the shofar also is the cry from the heart, sort of the call of the wild. We all have that inner cry. And another story of the prince who was sent far away from the palace, and he finds himself in a very foreign land. And here, the prince realizes how far he strayed away, and he finally made his way back to the palace. But now he's all disheveled, and he's not at all looking like the prince. And he comes to the palace gates, and he says, "Here I am." He says, "Who are you?" He says, "I'm the prince." He says, "You're the prince. Look at the way you are." He says, "I'm the king's son." He says, "You're not the king's son." And they throw him away from the palace gates, and that's when he starts to cry. And that soft and simple cry travels through the palace gates, through the windows of the palace. And the only individual that recognizes that cry is who? The father, his father, the king. And he realizes that's my son that's crying. And he, to everyone's surprise, runs out of the palace gates and embraces his son and says, "You made it home." And that's the call of the shofar. The sound of the shofar is that simple but sincere cry, the authentic cry. And it's actually three sounds.
And let me tell you before you do that. So we're basically praying for a good year,
Correct.
for good things to happen, and what will be, and what decrees will be made about us. So I'm going to actually have Shmuel do it first.
You want to have
Shmuel, you're going to show everybody you're a prodigy in blowing the shofar.
You want to try it?
And you're going to try. Hey, I
No,
want you to give it a try.
You want to sing the song, or you want to do the shofar first?
Shmuel's in charge, basically,
Okay, so
because
here,
all
you can do
holidays
it.
are for children.
Let's see.
So
how
let's try. Wow.
That's beautiful, beautiful.
Shmuel, that's beautiful. If I tell you, if I tried to blow that shofar right now, I couldn't do it. That was beautiful. And we're going to have Rabbi Ivy blow the shofar for a lot of reasons. One, for everyone who's not going to hear the shofar for this month, hear about the shofar. And it's actually a tradition in the month before New Year's to blow the shofar every day except for Saturday. And it's nice to be able to blow the shofar and hear it. And some of us who might not have ever heard a shofar blown, you read about it in the text of the Bible, so that helps us a little bit to understand what it sounds like. And for people of the Jewish faith who might not have heard it, it gives us a calling to maybe go to synagogue and do different things that we might not have done before. So I'm going to let Rabbi Ivry tell us about the three sounds of the shofar and blow the shofar for us.
Right, so we have the tekiah, which is a straight sound, the straight long sound. We have the trua, which is the three sort of broken sounds. And then we have the sharm, rather, the trua is a very short, very succinct, short blasts that we sound. Each one represents a different type of cry from the heart. And the idea is that we all want to express this very sincere cry that we should be blessed.
I think we need to hear it. We should all be blessed for a good year. Everyone of all faiths should have a wonderful year.
And of course, the shofar is sounded both on Rosh Hashanah and also at the conclusion of the High Holy Days on Yom Kippur at the end of the fast. So I'll rise, as it is tradition, to stand during the shofar blowing, and you'll hear the three different sounds. So this is the tekiah. Now the shvarim. And now the trua, the short, very succinct sounds. And then finally, we end with another tekiah with a very straight sound.
And I think we do 100 sounds every day.
Correct,
right?
on Rosh Hashanah.
Rosh Hashanah.
A total of 100 sounds, which sounds like a lot. But
it's a lot for the person who's blowing the shofar.
Right, it does take time. There he goes again.
Well, that's beautiful. And I think
he wants to try the other sounds.
That's
very
beautiful,
good,
Shmuel.
Do you want to sing the song?
I think this was the first time on CTV or on our cable station that we've heard a shofar being blown. So really, it should be a wonderful first thing. So and all holidays, of course, are for children. So Shmuel's going to help us sing about honey. And maybe Rabbi Ivy will tell him about honey for a second.
So, although people somewhat are concerned about the long.
I think we've finished with the chauffeur for today. I'll take the chauffeur.
That's a very, very fun part. But there are other fun parts of the holiday, such as, of course, the meal that we have the night of Rosh Hashanah. This year, Sunday, September 9th, and Tuesday, Monday night and going into Tuesday, we have the apple and the honey. We have, as you see here, is a very nice dish. Any honey is fine. The reason is we want to wish each other a sweet year. It's not good enough to have a good year. We want it to be sweet, that we could actually taste it. In other words, we could appreciate the year to be good. And that's why we add the sweetness to it. We have of course, the candles that we light before the meal, the goblet with the grape juice to bless the day, and the round chalis. Sometimes we have the elongated ones, but this time we use the round to signify the year, the cycle of the year. Rosh Hashanah means the head of the year. It doesn't mean the new year, means the head of the year, which means that it's a very integral part of the year, because it's a time of year when we traditionally believe that God judges us for the entire year. It's sort of the brain of the entire year. Being a neurologist, you could appreciate that.
I can appreciate the brain.
And it's the head, and therefore it's so integral. It's such a important part of the time of the year that actually continues through the 10 days up to Yom Kippur.
And I want to have Esther talk a little bit. Esther has so many wonderful things to say and so many stories. So please, what does Rosh Hashanah mean to you? What does New Year's mean to you?
All right. My first, let's say, connection to a new year obviously is 31st of December in Times Square. And I love to go there because it's so joyous, it's beautiful, the color, it's international. The whole world feels it. I remember that New Year's Eve of 1999 going into 2000. It was extraordinary. And a rabbi explained to me that, and this is humankind's memory, when Adam and Eve had their fall and they were disobedient, in whichever way it was, mankind began to see that in November, the days began to get shorter and darker. And they said, this is the end of us. This is no more. But towards the end of December, they began to see 2 minutes extra, 3 minutes extra of light. And then that's why the explosion of joy all over the world, no matter what culture, because humankind has a memory of the distress that they felt initially in our human history when we had the break of not doing what God wanted all of humankind to do through our parents, our common parents, Adam and Eve. And then we have forgotten that there was such joy, because at the end of the year, I always remember people running to do an extra donation because of taxes, and you have to pay your bills at the end of the year, and maybe you'll even pay an extra mortgage to bring down your mortgage. We're all involved in our lives, and we forget that joy of realizing that it wasn't over yet, that there would be more and more light for humankind to enjoy, because He didn't want to finish humankind because of the sin of two. We had humanity in a very Jewish concept which is called tikkun olam, which is making the world better, redeeming things that are not right. Humankind had the possibility, and humankind was given that special opportunity that even to this day, the most important party is the one on the 31st of December in Times Square, internationally seen, magnificent. And we have to remember that we're joyous, that we are here to do good, not only for ourselves, but for human beings, to make the world better.
So Rabbi Avery, and thank you. So Rabbi Avery, when you think about Jewish New Year and then Yom Kippur, you think to yourself, you see a lot of people going to synagogue, spending a lot of time, seem like they're tired, different things. Is it a happy holiday? Is it a somber holiday? Is it introspective? Tell us a little bit what as a rabbi, people should be thinking about New Year's.
There's a saying in the Talmud, there's no greater holiday than the 15th of Av and Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur essentially is a joyous holiday, although it's a day of fasting and introspection. But the greatest joy, perhaps, is that we know that we're being forgiven. greatest gift perhaps is forgiveness. And Yom Kippur is a day of atonement, and it begins again with Rosh Hashanah, the process where we start to introspect and think how we can make this year better. We look at the past year. Right now we're right before Rosh Hashanah, so we're thinking about our past year. But then we look also towards the new year, and we're thinking how we can make the year so much more meaningful. And Yom Kippur really expresses that idea that that there's another chance, there's another opportunity for us to do so much more in the upcoming year.
So do people really fast? I mean, the concept that people in my office, they say, you actually fast for an entire 25 hours, means you don't drink,
it's not only fasting, it's actually, there's 5 prohibitions on Yom Kippur, beginning at sunset this year, Tuesday, September 18th, going into Wednesday, September 19th. So beginning at sunset, one is not allowed to do 5 things until nightfall of the following day. And that is not to eat or drink. So yes, no eating, no drink, not even a sip of water. And of course, the exception would be someone who is gravely ill. But even pregnant women, nursing mothers fast, believe it or not, unless, again, by doctor's orders, they need to eat something or take medication. And obviously that's the exception. But otherwise, no eating or drinking, no wearing leather footwear. So we wear sneakers or something that of a lesser value to show that we're sort of in touch with reality, with the ground. We don't wear the leather that sort of separates us sometimes from reality. And then we have, we also do not take any baths, so we don't bathe. Even washing our hands is limited to the knuckles. So we refrain from any bathing or washing. And that includes even sometimes not even rinsing the mouth out. That would include that as well. We also refrain from anointments, any oils or any ointments that we don't put on ourselves, or perfumes. And finally, the 5th prohibition would be any intimacy, any intimate relations we don't have during that time. We're sort of like angels. We dress in white. We, in a way, express that idea of angelic type of life that we're sort of above, different than other fast days that we have in the year, which perhaps symbolize more mourning and sadness. Yom Kippur is actually a day when we're actually elated. We reach a higher level in spiritual.
And it's an individual, but whenever I think about Yom Kippur, I think about just the group, that we go to a synagogue and people are always there, people you haven't seen in such a long period of time. It really is also a tremendous gathering of the whole community that one day.
Certainly.
I grew up in Brooklyn, and to see the large Russian community come out.
Right, especially for Yizkor, which is with the prayer for those who passed on. But Yom Kippur actually has 5 prayers, different than an ordinary day, which only has 3 prayers in the Jewish tradition, or on the Sabbath we have 4 prayers. Yom Kippur is the only day.
Most of any holiday.
The only day where we have 5 prayers, which really reflect the 5 levels of the soul spiritually. We were able to tap into that most inner part of the soul, and really reach a very high spiritual level.
And we also know that singing is a part of the soul, and Shmuel is practiced, and I'm so proud of him for this. So he's going to sing his little song with all of us, okay? About honey.
Apple and honey.
Let's do that together, okay? I want you to sing with me.
Okay, here we go. Ready?
1, 2, 3.
Dip the apple in the honey, make a bracha loud and clear. Mashana tova uberacha.
Have a happy, sweet
New Year.
Very good.
That's beautiful. And that was actually the Hebrew word for Lashana Tova, means Happy New Year.
Right.
And we want to have a good year. So Esther, back to you. We talked about Yom Kippur. And most people, as I can't tell you enough, most of my people in my staff, and I have a large staff, and people always come up to me and say, how are you not going to eat for that day? And I know all the things that we all go through. What do you tell people who say, what are you going to do that day? It's impossible to do.
Okay, for me, it starts with Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah.
There's a feeling of awe, because people think, oh, well, the men, they go to the synagogue and they do their prayers, but it's the woman who brings on the holiday. And the man relies on the woman to be the one to light the candles. And it's the woman who decides, I'm going to light Of course, it has to be within the time frame of the 18 minutes before sunset, but she can do it earlier. The woman determines when the holiday starts in her home, and that's extremely powerful, and that is extremely important, because she's at home, she's lighting her candles, she's saying prayers, she's asking Hashem, she's asking God to bless her family, to bless her community, to bless the world, and you begin to feel this awe. We're being judged. So I grew up in Washington Heights. You're from Brooklyn. The rabbi is from Crown Heights. In Washington Heights, you always felt this awe. There were a lot of Holocaust survivors, and when these holidays came around, there was such a feeling that I perceived of love for this holiday, that there was a renewal from what they had known before. They didn't speak about it, but the way that they carried themselves. And then when I learned more about it, I became really in awe of these days. And I heard that going into Yom Kippur, after you spend the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, you start to build up and you ask Him to please inscribe everyone for a good year. Please that it should be a good year. Please bless the world with kindness. Please don't allow any more bloodshed anywhere in the world. And then comes the big day of Yom Kippur, and I personally am terrified. I have been terrified all my life because people say, you know, it's being sealed. And then I met another rabbi. The solution is to talk. And he says to me, it's like when you're going to go to court. You have a nice meal, you get dressed, and you go and you present your case, and you say, look, I've tried to give charity, I've tried to be kind to others, I've tried to do my best. Please allow me another year of more kindness, of more love for human beings, of more tikkun olam, that idea of repairing the world and what it needs repairing, and I'll try to do my best. So with that idea that we're going to a court case, and you prepare accordingly, you have an appropriate meal, you get nicely dressed up, and you prepare your case, I stopped being that terrified as I used to be.
How beautiful.
Realizing that it's in my hands. It's very empowering to be able to
And the introspection that you said is it's just an idea that we look at it. I've got the rabbi here, and I'm going to talk. We talked about the high holidays and what New Year's is, the anniversary of the birth of the world. This year it's 5779. It's a lot of years. And then comes Yom Kippur, when we have this whole idea of this culmination of this introspection, as Esther so eloquently said. So all of us in New York City who are watching, after the holidays are over, we see the outgrowth of these little huts. And they wind up outside of people's houses, and people are celebrating and smiling and laughing, and they're walking around with these fruits and these palms, and people think about them. Tell me all about what's the next holiday that comes up right in succession.
So the following holiday, 4 days actually after Yom Kippur, is Sukkot. Sukkot is where we have the huts symbolizing when the Israelites left Egypt. Now, although they left in the springtime, we celebrate when in the autumn, where it seems not so popular to go out and spend time in the outdoors, to show that we're doing it to remember that great miracle of being surrounded by the clouds of glory in the wilderness. And it's a very joyous holiday. So you're asking about the joyous part of Yom Kippur. Well, it's joyous, but it's in a more intimate, quiet type of joy. Sukkot and Simchat Torah, which is the culmination of the entire holiday, we dance with the Torah. That's the epitome of joy. That's when we have the boundless joy and unbridled joy that it's just really expresses that deep joy that we had perhaps in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur in a more quiet way. We express it more on Sukkot and Simchat Torah.
Yes.
There's a very universal element in living outside in these little huts. Because you say you're from Brooklyn, and the rabbis' families are originally French. And I happen to be from Cuba. And if I can tell you all the places I've lived, I can tell you that the sukkah, where we all sit, is our only permanent residence. We all come from somewhere. We've all been travelers. And when you're sitting out there and you're underneath the stars, it's actually very romantic that you're in touch with Him who's created the world. You're still, you're drinking your wine, you're having your honey, but it is so, so sweet a holiday that you have a permanent home that Jews, no matter what, the sukkah is open. You can come and sit down and partake of the bounty. And if I may add, Dr. Perel, when the Pilgrims arrived in the United States, they had a memory of the Jews in England who used to sit out in these huts, and they used to give thanks for the crop. And there are historians that say that our beautiful American holiday of Thanksgiving is based precisely on the celebration by Jews of Sukkot. This joyous holiday that Rabbi Ivry mentioned takes place 4 days after our awesome day of Yom Kippur.
So it's a very, very busy month.
Certainly. Certainly.
So, and that's called the month of Tishrei, which is the first Hebrew month of the year. So, Rabbi Ivry, we have only a couple of minutes left. Is there anything you'd like to talk about to the populations out there, to our wonderful audience who's listening, and saying to themselves, what an interesting that we blow the shofar.
I would just say that if you ever have an opportunity to join in a Rosh Hashanah meal, certainly take it on, perhaps even to stop by a synagogue and see how the service is conducted. It seems a little overwhelming, but focus on a little bit of the prayers. You'll see it's very meaningful, and it really speaks to the soul and the heart. I just like to say that I would like to take this opportunity to wish, as we traditionally wish each other, a happy and healthy New Year, to Dr. Perel, to Esther, to Shmuel, and also to our producer, David Marcus, who's always doing a great job behind the scenes.
Without David, the show would not go on.
And of course, to the entire staff here, and that's Allan Cable, and the entire universe. Really, we all wish.
Sister, is there anybody you'd like to wish a happy New Year to?
My husband, the Maestro Yeshaya ben Abraham Avinu, also known as Orlando Sanchez Soto, and Rabbi and Rebbetzin Gerald Sussman, as well as two very dear friends, Cynthia Mailman, who's a very nice artist here from Staten Island, as well as my friend Ellen Steinberg, and of course Christina here, who's helped us along.
And that's the beauty. And even myself, as we talk about all the people that we want to wish Happy New Year to, it's sort of similar to December 31st when you tell to people Happy New Year, Happy New Year. All the people that we love very much, my wonderful family, my wife Susan, my kids, Harrison, Evan and Jackie, my mom Naomi, my wonderful, wonderful staff, and really being able to say to them, Happy, Happy New Year. We have a couple of minutes left, and it's such a nice opportunity to see everyone. And Shmuel, do you want to say hi to anybody? Let's say hi to Mom.
Say hello.
Say your mom.
To your brother.
Say Happy New Year.
Ella, say happy. Say
Happy
wave.
New Year.
Wave to the camera. He's a little.
So tell us, as a rabbi, how do you prepare for the high holidays?
So, a lot of introspection. It all starts from within. That's what they say, that the arrow, the more you pour towards your heart, the further the arrow goes. And of course, the sermons are important, but it's really about thinking how we could make the year better. And I try to do that as best I can.
And that's what's so interesting. I mean, you're a spiritual leader of a group of people, and it's so and these people look up to you, of course, and use by example, and that's what really makes it so special that we look up to you. And really, I want to thank you so much for being here.
It's a real honor.
At this wonderful event. You were able to do the model Seder this year. Now we're able to do the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur story, and any stories you guys would like to talk about, we'd love to go over.
Thank you.
So Esther, and any parting words? We know you work at the UN, and you know that we all are hoping for peace on earth, and sometimes we say that in a way that's just, that's there. But in this world, we're going to basically say thank you all, and peace on earth for everyone, and happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.